In the heart of the Xilari Empire, on a throne built from the bones of conquered worlds, King Frail sat, brooding over the future of his people. His empire was vast, its warriors unmatched, and yet there was one problem he could not solve: his daughter, Princess Serica. From the day she was born, Serica had been frail. Unlike the other Xilari, who were strong, tall, and fierce, she was small, sickly, and constantly struggling with a weak immune system. To the Xilari, strength was everything. A ruler without strength was a failure, a target for the enemy, and an insult to the empire's glorious legacy. Many had already whispered behind the king's back, doubting whether Serica could ever lead, and some even wondered if she was fit to live. For years, King Frail tried everything he could to cure his daughter's frailty. He sought the most advanced Xilari healers, hired the greatest scientists, and searched the farthest reaches of space for a solution. Nothing worked. Serica's condition only worsened, and with each passing day, the whispers grew louder. Frail, known for his brutal strategies and tactical brilliance, was known to solve problems with force. But this time, nothing could help him. As the political pressure mounted, he found himself cornered. His enemies in the court were already scheming to replace him with another heir. They believed that only a strong, capable leader could save the empire from its growing threats. That's when Frail made a desperate decision. He would do the unthinkable. He would send his daughter to the humans. The humans, a young species on a distant, barely charted world, were often dismissed by the Xilari as weak and inferior. They were small, unremarkable, and they lacked the advanced technology and military might of the Xilari. However, there was something about them that the king could not ignore: rumors of their adaptability. Humans, it seemed, were capable of extraordinary feats, thriving in conditions that would cripple other species. Their soldiers could be molded into weapons with startling speed, and their minds were quick to adapt to new challenges. The king saw an opportunity. If his daughter could somehow be trained by these humans, maybe, just maybe, she could become something more than what she was: a weak, sickly princess. But there was another reason for his choice: the commander of a human military force, a man known as Darius Voss. Darius had made a name for himself across the galaxy by turning the most hopeless recruits into unstoppable warriors. He was known for his brutal training methods, his discipline, and his unwavering belief in the potential of those under his command. Darius was feared and respected by all who knew him. Frail knew that if anyone could transform his daughter, it was Darius. The king's decision shocked the empire, and many saw it as a sign of desperation. The princess was sent to Earth, and Darius Voss was tasked with her transformation. Serica, once the frail princess of the Xilari Empire, would now have to face the harshest of human training. Her father's hope hung on the fragile hope that this decision would not be her undoing, but her salvation. Serica's arrival on Earth was nothing like she expected. When she first set foot on the barren military base on Titan, she had imagined some form of luxury, a warm welcome, or even a glimpse of kindness. Instead, she was met with the harsh, biting winds of the moon's cold landscape, and a commander whose eyes were as sharp as daggers. Darius Voss, the human commander known throughout the galaxy for his ruthless training methods, stood waiting for her. His expression was unreadable as he sized her up. Serica, with her pale skin and delicate frame, seemed like an easy target for his brutal regime. But Darius saw something different. She was not just a frail alien princess. She was a challenge, and Darius loved a good challenge. The first day of training began almost immediately. Serica was given no time to adjust to her new surroundings. Darius threw her into physical drills that pushed her body to its absolute limits. She had never known such pain. Her muscles screamed with every step, her lungs burned with each breath, and her joints ached as if they would collapse under her. Darius didn't give her a single moment of rest. Every time she stumbled, every time she fell, he was there, standing over her, cold and unyielding. "Get up," he would command, his voice steady and emotionless. "You're not going to get any sympathy here, Serica. There's no place for weakness in the world you've chosen." At first, Serica thought she might die from exhaustion. Her fragile body, so accustomed to soft treatments and pampered care, could barely withstand the harshness of the human training regimen. But as the days dragged on, something inside her began to shift. Slowly, through the endless drills and the grueling challenges, she realized that Darius wasn't trying to break her. He was trying to forge her into something stronger. The humans, with their unrelenting willpower and their ability to push past their limits, had something she could never have imagined. It was a strength that came from within, a drive that could not be taught or forced, but had to be discovered through sheer will. Darius didn't care about her royal blood or her title. He saw only potential. When she complained of pain, he simply told her, "Pain is just a sign that you're still alive. If you want to be something more, you have to learn to embrace it." Serica didn't fully understand at first. She had never known a life where pain wasn't avoided or healed with advanced auxiliary medicine. But under Darius's harsh guidance, she began to realize that this human way, the way of enduring and growing stronger, was her only path forward. Weeks passed, and Serica's body began to change. Her frailty started to fade as the human training pushed her limits, forcing her to grow stronger and faster than she had ever been. She began to notice changes she had never dreamed possible. Her once shaky hands now held weapons with confidence, her body moved with a newfound fluidity, and her mind sharpened as Darius taught her not just to fight, but to think like a soldier. The more she learned, the more she realized that her father's decision to send her here was not a punishment. It was a chance to prove herself. However, not everyone shared this belief. On Earth, many questioned whether Serica could ever become what they needed her to be. They saw her as a fragile alien princess, too weak to survive the brutal demands of their training. But Darius Voss, the man who had turned countless recruits into warriors, believed in her. He knew she was capable of becoming far more than anyone expected. And as each day passed, Serica's strength grew, both physically and mentally, and she began to see herself as something far different than the fragile princess who had first arrived on Earth. She was beginning to understand what it meant to be truly powerful, and it was all thanks to the harsh, unyielding training of Commander Darius Voss. As the weeks turned into months, Serica's transformation became undeniable. Her once frail body was now stronger, more resilient, and much quicker than it had ever been. Each day, Commander Darius Voss pushed her harder, testing her limits and forcing her to confront pain in ways she never thought possible. It wasn't easy, far from it. Serica was still haunted by her past weakness, the memories of her fragile self still lingering in the back of her mind. But with each grueling day of training, she felt that old version of herself slipping away, replaced by someone new, someone stronger. Darius, for all his brutal methods, had a clear purpose. He wasn't just training Serica to survive. He was training her to be unstoppable. At first, Serica had struggled with the constant pressure. Her body would ache, her energy would drain, and she'd often wonder how much more she could endure. But Darius never let her quit. "There's no time for weakness here," he would say, his voice steady, his eyes never leaving her. "You'll thank me when you're no longer just a princess. You'll thank me when you're a warrior." It wasn't just physical training. Darius taught her the art of war, how to think like a soldier. He made her study the strategies of the greatest human generals, teaching her to outsmart her enemies before she even faced them. She learned about tactics, about ambushes and traps, about knowing your enemy's weaknesses and using them to your advantage. Serica's mind, once clouded by fear and doubt, began to clear. She could see the bigger picture now. The constant pain was no longer a deterrent, it was a tool to sharpen her mind, her body, and her will. One evening, after a particularly brutal training session, Serica found herself sitting alone outside, staring up at the stars. The cold air bit at her skin, but it felt like a comfort now, a reminder that she was still alive. The pain from her muscles, the exhaustion from her training, it all felt different. She was no longer just enduring. She was thriving. She realized that in the short time she had been on Earth, she had become someone she barely recognized. A warrior, a fighter, someone who could survive anything. And with that realization came a strange sense of pride. For the first time in her life, Serica truly believed she could accomplish what her father had sent her to do. But it wasn't just her body that had changed. Her confidence had grown as well. She began to speak with authority, holding herself with the kind of presence that demanded respect. When she entered a room, people noticed. Her eyes, once soft and uncertain, now burned with the fire of determination. Darius had awakened something within her, a strength she never knew she had. Every time she faced a challenge, she remembered his words. Pain is not your enemy. It is your strength. It wasn't long before Darius saw the fruits of his labor. Serica, once a fragile alien princess, had become a warrior in her own right. She was no longer just a product of Sci-fi royalty. She was a product of human resilience, human adaptability. The combination of her natural auxiliary abilities and the human discipline she had embraced made her a force to be reckoned with. She was faster, stronger, and more strategic than ever before. The rumors that had once laughed at her frailty now spoke of her in awe. One day, during a training session that was meant to be a simple endurance test, Serica surprised even Darius. She completed the entire course without hesitation, her movements so fluid and precise that it seemed like she had become one with her surroundings. When she finished, Darius stood still for a moment, looking at her with a mixture of pride and respect. "You're ready," he said, his voice low. Serica had become something no one had expected, something unstoppable. One night, the silence of the military base was shattered. Serica had just finished a long day of training when a series of explosions rocked the compound. The sound of gunfire filled the air as the base's alarms blared, warning everyone of an incoming threat. Without hesitation, Serica sprang into action, her instincts kicking in as she rushed to the command center. Darius was already there, his face set in a grim expression. "They found us," he said, his voice low and steady. "A group of Sci-fi assassins. They think you're still the weak princess they can eliminate." Serica's heart pounded in her chest, but there was no fear in her eyes. She had learned to channel her fear into focus. The enemies that had once seen her as an easy target were now making a dangerous mistake. She wasn't the same person who had arrived on Earth months ago. She was stronger, faster, and more capable than they could ever imagine. Darius turned to her, his eyes sharp. "I'm going to give you one chance, Serica. You have to take this seriously. These assassins won't hold back. You either survive or you don't. No second chances." Serica nodded, her mind already racing through the tactics Darius had taught her. She knew what she had to do. These were Sci-fi assassins, highly trained killers who specialized in stealth and precision. But they hadn't prepared for the warrior she had become. She had no intention of letting them succeed. With Darius at her side, Serica moved swiftly through the corridors of the base, her senses heightened, every muscle in her body ready for action. The moment they rounded a corner, Serica caught a glimpse of one of the assassins, a tall, cloaked figure with glowing red eyes. Without a word, the assassin lunged at her, his blade aimed for her chest. But Serica was faster. Her movements were a blur as she dodged the strike, stepping aside with a fluid grace that only hours of training could achieve. She grabbed the assassin's wrist and twisted, disarming him in a single motion. The blade clattered to the ground as Serica's knee connected with his side, sending him crashing to the floor. He barely had time to react before she was on him, her hands around his throat, squeezing with all her newfound strength. Darius watched with a mix of pride and surprise as Serica took control of the situation. The once weak princess was now a force to be reckoned with, a warrior capable of taking on the deadliest of enemies. But there was no time to celebrate. More assassins were on their way, and Serica could hear their footsteps approaching fast. "We need to move," Darius said, snapping Serica out of her focus. "There's no time for hesitation." Serica nodded, her eyes burning with determination. She was no longer a helpless princess. She was a fighter, a protector of her own destiny. As they moved through the base, taking out assassin after assassin, Serica felt a fire ignite within her. Each enemy she defeated only made her stronger. She wasn't just surviving now. She was thriving, embracing every challenge, every moment of battle. By the time the last assassin was taken down, the base was quiet again. The danger had passed, but Serica's transformation had only just begun. Darius stood beside her, his eyes filled with respect. "You did well," he said. "Better than I ever imagined." Serica stood tall, breathing heavily but steady. She knew that this was just the beginning. The assassins had come for her, but they had underestimated what she had become. She wasn't just the daughter of a king. She wasn't just an alien princess. She was a warrior. And nothing, not even the fiercest of enemies, would stand in her way. The news of Serica's victory over the Xilari assassins spread like wildfire. The warriors of the Xilari Empire, who had once ridiculed her for her frailty, were now whispering her name with a mix of awe and fear. Her father, King Frail, received reports of her strength and cunning with both pride and unease. He had never imagined that the human training would turn his daughter into such a formidable warrior. But now, more than ever, he understood the gravity of what he had set in motion. The time had come for Serica to prove herself in the trial of dominion, a gladiatorial battle that determined the true heir to the throne. It was a brutal tradition of the Xilari, where the strongest fighter in the empire could challenge the king's rule. Only one could emerge victorious, and that one would claim the throne. King Frail, knowing that his daughter's position had been uncertain for so long, decided to test her in the arena, hoping to silence the doubters once and for all. The trial was held in a vast coliseum, where the cries of past champions echoed through the blood-soaked sands. The audience, composed of the most powerful Xilari nobles and warriors, gathered to watch the spectacle. They were eager to see Serica fail, convinced that no amount of human training could turn her into a true leader. The first challengers to face her were seasoned warriors, men and women who had fought and killed in countless battles. They were larger, stronger, and more experienced than Serica, but they underestimated the transformation she had undergone. As the gates to the arena opened, Serica stepped forward, her heart beating with a mix of excitement and determination. She had trained for this moment. The cruel training under Darius, the countless hours of physical pain and mental discipline had all led her here. She had learned to push past her limits, to think like a soldier, and to fight like a predator. But even more than that, she had learned to embrace her own strength, something that had always been missing before. The first opponent, a towering Xilari warrior with black tattoos marking his body, charged at Serica with a roar. He was fast, his battle axe gleaming in the sunlight as he swung it down with brutal force. Serica didn't flinch. She had seen this kind of attack before. In an instant, she dodged to the side, her movements smooth and calculated. The warrior's axe hit the ground with a loud thud, and before he could recover, Serica's foot connected with his chest, sending him sprawling to the ground. The crowd gasped in disbelief. One by one, Serica defeated her opponents. She used their size and strength against them, exploiting their weaknesses and countering their attacks with precision. Her speed, honed by human training, gave her the edge in every fight. With each victory, the audience grew more silent, unsure of what to make of the once weak princess who now stood in the center of the arena, undefeated. Finally, it came time for Serica's last opponent, Commander Toran, a battle-hardened veteran who had never lost a fight in the trial of dominion. His reputation was legendary, and the crowd roared as he stepped into the arena. Unlike the others, Toran was calculating, methodical, and a master of psychological warfare. He tried to play with Serica's mind, using his words to unsettle her. "You don't belong here, princess. You're nothing more than a puppet of your father. You'll never be strong enough." Serica's eyes narrowed, her mind calm. She had faced doubt before, and she would not let it distract her now. The fight was fierce. Torrent's strikes were powerful, but Serica moved with an elegance and precision that he couldn't match. She danced around his attacks, waiting for the perfect moment. And then, with a swift, calculated move, Serica disarmed him, knocking his sword out of his hand and forcing him to the ground. The crowd went silent. With one final move, Serica stood victorious, her chest rising and falling with each breath. The once weak princess had proven herself as a warrior, a leader, and a force to be reckoned with. The trial of dominion had ended, and Serica had claimed her place as the rightful heir to the Xylari throne. Serica's victory in the trial of dominion sent shockwaves throughout the Xylari Empire. The nobles, who had once doubted her, now bowed to her with respect, their faces a mixture of awe and fear. They had witnessed her strength and skill, but they couldn't fully understand the extent of the transformation she had undergone. To them, she was no longer the frail princess they had dismissed. She was a living legend, a symbol of power. However, not everyone was pleased with her rise. Talon Rix, the commander of the Xylari elite guard and a close ally to King Vael-Zur, looked at Serica's newfound strength with growing concern. Talon had always been a supporter of the old ways, believing that only the strongest and most ruthless should lead. He had trained his whole life to serve the king, and he had never seen an heir rise so quickly without fully understanding the intricacies of leadership. Talon feared that Serica's training, shaped by human methods, might not be enough to prepare her for the political complexities of ruling the empire. Talon approached King Vael-Zur with his concerns, his voice low and careful. "My king, I do not question your judgment, but I fear that Serica's training has made her a warrior, not a ruler. The empire requires more than strength. It requires wisdom, diplomacy, and cunning. These qualities cannot be honed through brute force." Vael-Zur listened, his expression hard to read. He had always trusted Talon's counsel, but he could not ignore the progress Serica had made. He had seen the fear and respect in the eyes of the Xylari nobles as his daughter emerged from the arena victorious. He knew that the empire needed someone strong, someone who could defend it from its enemies, and Serica had proven that she was more than capable of doing that. But Talon had a point. Leadership was not only about power, it was about influence, strategy, and the ability to unite a fractured empire. "I have watched Serica grow," Vael-Zur said slowly, his gaze distant. "She has surpassed all expectations, even mine. But I will not let her rule without the knowledge she needs to guide our people." Talon nodded, though he was still uneasy. "And how will you ensure she gains that knowledge, my king?" Vael-Zur turned to face Talon, his eyes filled with resolve. "I will send her to the Elder Council, a group of the most experienced leaders and strategists in the empire. There she will learn the ways of governance. She will learn how to control the political landscape, how to keep her enemies at bay, and how to unite the divided factions of our people." Talon's face softened slightly, but his concern remained. "I will follow your decision, my king, but I believe that the council may not accept her. She is not one of them, and her rise has been unconventional. Some may see her as a threat." Vael-Zur's expression darkened. "Then she will have to prove them wrong, just as she proved everyone else wrong." Meanwhile, Serica was preparing for her next challenge. After her victory in the trial, she had gained the respect of many, but she knew that respect alone wouldn't be enough to secure her rule. She had been raised to fight, to conquer, and to lead through strength. But now, she faced a new battle, one that required more than just skill with a blade. She needed to navigate the treacherous waters of Xylari politics, to build alliances, and to earn the trust of the very people who had once dismissed her. As Serica looked out over the palace's grand balcony, the weight of her new responsibilities settled upon her. She had proven her strength in the arena, but the true battle was only just beginning. With Darius's teachings still fresh in her mind, Serica vowed to meet this challenge head-on. She would not let her empire fall. She had already faced the greatest test of her life, and she had emerged victorious. Now, she would face the next test, and this time she would not fight alone. The day Serica arrived at the Elder Council, the air was thick with tension. The Elder Council was a place of great authority, where the oldest and wisest of the Xelari rulers, generals, and strategists gathered to discuss matters of the empire. Each member of the council had been through countless battles, navigated intricate political plots, and held power over the fate of entire worlds. Serica, though proven in the arena, felt like an outsider among them. These men and women were not like the soldiers she had faced in battle. They were rulers, manipulators of politics, and guardians of tradition. And Serica knew she had to earn their respect, not by force, but by intellect and diplomacy. As she stepped into the grand hall, all eyes turned to her. The council members, draped in elegant robes and adorned with symbols of power, whispered among themselves. Their gazes were sharp, skeptical. The whispers grew louder as Serica walked forward, her every step echoing off the cold stone walls. Some saw her only as the daughter of a king, a warrior who had been trained in human ways. To them, she was no true leader, not one with the ancient bloodline and centuries of wisdom that the council members had. At the center of the room, Elder Joran, the head of the council, rose from his seat. His long silver hair and piercing green eyes made him a formidable presence. "So the princess has come," Joran said, his voice full of suspicion. "Tell us, Serica, what makes you believe you are fit to rule our people? You have proven yourself in the arena, but the empire requires more than the strength of a warrior. It requires the wisdom of a ruler." Serica's heart pounded, but she did not let it show. She had trained for this moment, for this very challenge. She stepped forward, her posture steady, and met Joran's gaze without hesitation. "I understand the weight of leadership, Elder Joran," Serica replied, her voice firm. "Strength alone is not enough to lead. I know this, but I have learned that wisdom comes not just from age or titles. It comes from experience. I have faced battles, both physical and mental, and I have learned from them. I have seen the weaknesses in our empire, the divisions, the complacency. I will unite our people, not by force, but by earning their trust and showing them that I am capable of leading them to a better future." The council members exchanged glances. Some of them frowned, others raised an eyebrow. Joran's lips curled into a small, skeptical smile. "You speak of uniting our people, but your path to power has been anything but traditional. You were trained by humans, not by the ancient ways of the Xelari. How do you plan to win the loyalty of those who believe you are nothing more than a puppet of your father?" Serica paused, choosing her words carefully. "I do not deny my training, nor do I hide it. The humans taught me how to be resourceful, how to think on my feet, how to adapt when the odds are against me. The Xelari teach strength and strategy, but strength without adaptability is weakness. My path may not be traditional, but it is mine, and I will prove to you, and to the people of this empire, that it is enough." The room was silent for a long moment. Joran regarded Serica with a mixture of curiosity and doubt. "You speak of adaptability," he said slowly, "but the Xelari Empire is not a place for the weak. We have survived for centuries because we know how to wield power, how to control our enemies, and how to protect our way of life. If you wish to lead, you must prove that you can do the same." Serica stood tall, her hands clenched at her sides. "I will prove it, Elder Joran. I will show you that I can lead our people with strength, wisdom, and the courage to face what is coming. The empire is divided, and I will unite it, by forging alliances, by strengthening our defenses, and by ensuring that every Xelari knows they have a place in the future I will build." The council was still, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Joran nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. "We shall see, Princess Serica. We shall see." As Serica turned to leave, she felt a sense of resolve settle within her. She had made her case, and now the real test would begin. The council had not yet accepted her, but Serica was no stranger to hard battles. She would win them over, one challenge at a time. The future of the empire was in her hands, and she would stop at nothing to shape it into something worthy of its people. Serica's time at the Elder Council was not without its challenges. The council members, despite their respect for her combat abilities, were still unconvinced of her capabilities as a ruler. They constantly questioned her decisions, tested her resolve, and tried to push her to her breaking point. But Serica refused to back down. Every obstacle they threw her way, she met with determination and a sharp mind, using her experiences and the lessons she had learned to navigate the political minefield. Slowly, but surely, she began to gain the respect of some of the council members. However, not everyone was convinced. Talon Rix, still wary of her rise to power, continued to watch her closely. He had always been loyal to the king, and he respected the old ways of the Siluri Empire. To him, Serica's unorthodox training and rapid ascent seemed like a threat to the very foundation of the empire. He couldn't understand how a princess who had been raised among humans, a people so different from the Siluri, could possibly understand the complexities of ruling an empire. He kept his distance, observing from the shadows, unsure whether he could ever fully trust her. Meanwhile, Serica worked tirelessly to strengthen her position. She knew that if she wanted to gain full control of the empire, she needed more than just the support of the council. She needed the trust of the people, the common warriors, the soldiers, the civilians who were the backbone of the Siluri Empire. She began visiting different colonies, listening to the concerns of the people, and learning about their struggles. Everywhere she went, she made a point of showing them that she was not just a princess in name, but a leader who truly cared for the well-being of the empire. It was during one of these visits that Serica first encountered Karin, a young but fierce warrior who had fought in several skirmishes against the empire's enemies. Karin had heard of Serica's victories in the arena and was eager to meet the woman who had defeated so many powerful foes. When they finally crossed paths, Karin was impressed by Serica's poise and strength. She had expected the princess to be aloof and detached, but instead, Serica was approachable and humble, willing to listen to her concerns and offer solutions. Karin, who had grown disillusioned with the Siluri leadership and their indifference to the struggles of the common soldiers, found herself drawn to Serica's vision of a united empire. "You're not like the others," Karin said, her voice filled with admiration. "You truly care about us, about the people, and that's something I haven't seen in a leader for a long time." Serica smiled, grateful for the compliment. "I understand your frustration," she replied. "I know that the Siluri Empire is divided. We have a long way to go before we can truly call ourselves united. But I believe that if we all work together, if we focus on our shared strengths, we can overcome any obstacle." Karin nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I want to help," she said, stepping closer. "I want to fight for that future. For a future where the empire doesn't just stand tall, but stands strong for everyone." Serica looked at Karin with a newfound respect. She could see the fire in the young warrior's eyes, the same fire that had once burned in her own heart. "Then join me," Serica said. "Help me lead the Siluri. We'll build a future together." Over time, Karin became one of Serica's most trusted allies. Together, they gathered support from the ranks of the Siluri military, rallying warriors who believed in Serica's vision. Slowly but surely, Serica began to build a network of loyal followers, people who believed in her strength, her wisdom, and her ability to lead the empire to a better future. However, there were still those who opposed her rise. Joran, the head of the Elder Council, remained skeptical of Serica's methods. He had watched her win battles and gain supporters, but he still saw her as too unpredictable, too different from the ancient rulers of their empire. "She is too much like the humans," he said in a private meeting with Talon. "Her methods may work now, but they will only bring chaos in the long run." Talon remained silent, torn between his loyalty to the king and his growing doubts about Serica's ability to lead. He could see her strength, but he wasn't sure if she was the right choice for the Siluri Empire. The struggle for control of the empire was far from over, and Serica knew that the true test was still to come. But with allies like Karen by her side, she was more determined than ever to prove that she was not just a warrior, she was a ruler, and she would stop at nothing to unite her people. The day had finally arrived when Serica was to face her greatest test yet. After months of preparation, negotiation, and strategizing, the HFY Empire was on the brink of a full-scale rebellion. Discontent had been growing among the factions that still opposed her rise to power, and now the situation had reached a boiling point. The rebel forces, led by Garrick Volnar, a former general who had once served the empire but now sought to overthrow it, had gathered in the southern regions, preparing to march toward the capital. Their army was vast, and they had powerful allies among the HFY nobles who still saw Serica as an illegitimate ruler. As Serica stood in the war room, looking at the maps spread before her, the weight of leadership settled heavily on her shoulders. She had proven herself in battle. She had earned the loyalty of many. But this was different. This was no simple skirmish. This was a fight for the future of the HFY Empire. The stakes were higher than ever, and Serica knew that the choices she made now would determine whether the empire would thrive or fall into chaos. Beside her, Karen, her most trusted ally, stood silently, her eyes fixed on the map as well. The two of them had spent countless hours discussing tactics and rallying support, but the time for talk was over. The rebels were closing in, and Serica had to act fast. "We can't let Garrick's forces reach the capital," Serica said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "We need to meet them head-on. If we wait, they'll only grow stronger. We need to show them that the HFY will not be divided." Karen nodded, her grip tightening around the hilt of her sword. "We'll take the southern pass. It's narrow, and Garrick's forces won't be able to maneuver as easily through it. We can trap them there, force them into a battle they don't want." Serica considered this for a moment. The southern pass was a dangerous route, but it was also their best option. It would give them the element of surprise and allow them to strike before the rebels could fully organize. But there was still one thing that troubled her: Talon Rix. Though Talon had become more respectful of her leadership, he still clung to his old ways, believing that brute force and overwhelming numbers were the key to victory. Serica had heard rumors that he was preparing a large-scale counteroffensive, one that would involve a direct assault on Garrick's forces. But Serica knew that such a strategy would play into the rebels' hands. It would be predictable, and it would lead to unnecessary bloodshed. "I need to speak with Talon," Serica said finally. "I need him to see that we can't win this by simply throwing soldiers at the problem. We need strategy, not just strength." Karen's eyes flickered with concern. "Are you sure he'll listen? He's been loyal to your father for so long. His way of thinking might be hard to change." Serica's face softened with determination. "I have to try. If I want to unite the empire, I have to show them that I can lead, not just in battle, but in every decision. This is my moment to prove that I'm not just my father's daughter. I'm a ruler in my own right." She left the war room, her mind racing with thoughts of the coming battle. As she approached Talon's chambers, she could feel the tension in the air. The hallway was quiet, save for the faint sound of footsteps behind her. Karen, ever watchful, was by her side. When Serica entered Talon's quarters, the commander was sitting at a large wooden table, his face grim. He looked up at her as she entered, his expression unreadable. "You've come to talk about the battle, I assume," he said, his tone even but laced with an edge of doubt. "Yes," Serica replied. "I've made my decision. We need to use the southern pass to trap Garrick's forces. It's the best chance we have to defeat them before they can reach the capital. We can't afford to waste time on a direct assault." Talon leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "And what if you're wrong? What if Garrick has already anticipated your move?" "Unwilling to take that risk," Serica said firmly. "The alternative is a massacre. We need to be smart, not just strong." Talon stared at her for a long moment, his eyes searching hers. Finally, he spoke, his voice quiet but filled with a newfound respect. "Then I will follow your lead, Princess." Serica's heart swelled with pride. She had earned Talon's trust, and with that trust, she knew they could win. The battle for the Empire was about to begin, but Serica was ready. She wasn't just a warrior, she was a ruler, and she would fight for her people until the very end.